Welcome, everybody, to the Tuesday Night Smite podcast, episode 25, our Smite World Championship preview this week. And yeah, that's what we're going to be looking at. Smite World Championship is obviously starting tomorrow on Wednesday, the 3rd of January, and HRX is also starting technically on Thursday, but it's really starting tomorrow as well. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Today, just before it starts, we have to really go into everything that we expect to happen there. So we have a lot of stuff to go through today. It's going to probably take some time, so sit back and enjoy, I guess. And Sabo, I'm going to direct it to you, the first point that we really want to discuss, and that's going to be the international teams. And I don't think there's going to be too much to say here, but what are we expecting out of them, just generally speaking?
Well, I think you and I are both expecting that these are the four international teams that made it are the teams that we're going to be seeing in the knockout rounds on Thursday. Neither of us expect them to pull off the upset on Wednesday. It is best of one, so anything can happen, but just the strength of the SPL teams should be enough to kind of knock them off. If there is a surprise, I'm looking at match 4 on Wednesday, which is Elevate versus Black Dragons. Which, with everything Hi-Rez has tried to change over the last 3 patches, we talked about it in the short last week about, they're trying to get rid of these 3 tanks, double hunter metas that Elevate likes to run, and this is Black Dragon's third LAN event in a row, third major LAN event in a row playing against these SPL teams. They made it to Masters in Atlanta for the spring. They made it to DreamHack at the summer finals, and now they're back at the World Championships. And so they have enough experience that if there's an upset, if Elevate doesn't adjust, which I think they do, because they didn't make any significant changes to it, but that's the matchup I'm looking at if there's any kind of upset. But again, I don't expect it to happen.
Yeah, I think just generally, just by the fact that we're calling them upsets, you can sort of deduct that we don't expect any of the international teams to beat any of the NA and DU teams this time around, right? It's only happened once so far, I think. And it was in a best of 1, so that's sort of an advantage for them as well, because in a best of 1 you can really come out and surprise a team and get a win through that. But I think Elevate's going to be still a tough team to do that against, even though they're technically the lowest seeded team out of NA and DU at the tournament, obviously. And yeah, the meta changes that we have seen, I mean, we agreed last week that it wasn't going to be enough to force it out, to force the triple tank double hunter meta out entirely. So I'm still confident that Elevate's going to be able to run it if they want to. And we know Elevate's an innovative team, right? So they might bring out something else that we haven't seen yet, but that they have specially prepared for the World Championship. But I think overall, it is the match that is most likely to be an upset, as weirdly as that may sound. Just because Brazil, from where Black Dragons are from, right, has historically been one of the stronger international regions, so outside of NA and EU. And it's not unlikely that they will be the ones to beat an NA or EU team if any team manages to do that this tournament. And yeah, I think other matchups that I'm looking towards might also be Energy against Nocturnes, right? Because Energy, they have been a bit inconsistent as the year has gone on. If they show up in good form, they should have no problem beating them. But if they drop down again from their Super Regionals level, which honestly I do not expect to happen, but on the off chance that it does, I think Nocturnes also has a chance here. Because, as I said already about Brazil, I think LATAM is also one of the better international regions.
Yeah, I was going to say something about the Energy Nocturnes gaming as well. It's very much what you said. If it depends on which energy team actually shows up. Is it the one that's inconsistent and doesn't play up to their level, or is it the one we get at Super Regionals that looks like it could run through the table and raise up a third World Championship? Like it's been a difficult to predict season for Energy. So, which team are we getting? Do they show up ready to go? And which I do think they will, at least in this first game on Thursday or on Wednesday. But again, in the best of ones, anything can happen. The longer a series goes, the more your flaws get shown to the world, and more teams can adapt to you. Like, for example, the Elevate set at Super Regionals, Elevate wins game one, but the longer that set goes, and Obey just grabs control of it because they're able to adapt and force Elevate into its weaker compositions. Like, so best of ones, anything can happen, but if Energy is the energy that we expect them to be, it shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, and I think that's what it's gonna come down to, honestly. The other two matchups, if we're looking at those as well, I think are going to be a bit less even, right? We have seen very little overall from the Oceanic region, which Scylla Esports is representing, I think.
Yeah, so. Scylla's out of Australia, or the Oceania region, and Entity, who's facing Obey, is from the Southeast Asia region.
Yeah, in both of those regions, right? Australia as a region hasn't been very successful overall in the Smite Esports scene. I think they've gone out in last place in pretty much every World Championship so far that they've attended.
Yeah.
And Southeast Asia is obviously a new region, so it's hard to expect what we're going to see. But generally, new regions coming in aren't going to be world beaters. And Obey is a team that's going to be hard to beat unless you are a top team yourself, I think. So they've been put into a hard matchup for the type of team that they are going to be. And I think they're going to struggle in that. So the two biggest upsets that I can really see are going to be between Energy and Nocturnes and Elevate and Black Dragons, not between the other two. I think those are generally a bit more clear as to who's going to go on in advance.
I mean, realistically, we both expect these four teams to be playing on Thursday.
Yeah, definitely.
Two of these teams, though, are going to be playing on Friday in the quarterfinals, and the reward for winning on Thursday is Team Rival and E United. Do we give, like, who do we pick for the Thursday matchups? Assuming it's all international teams, and Scylla versus Nocturnes and Entity versus Black Dragon. Do we go with the teams we've been talking about so far, Nocturnes and Black Dragons, or do you see like somebody in that international matchup when they play each other? Do you see anything different?
I think it's going to go the same route for the teams we already talked about, right? Black Dragons and Nocturnes. I think those two are going to come out ahead, just because we've already been talking them up, that they have a chance to actually win more of a chance to actually win their set against the EU teams that they're playing. I think, and as we talked about the other regions already, Oceania has been very unsuccessful, and Southeast Asia is a new team, and Southeast Asia is going up against Black Dragons, right? So probably the best international team against who we expect to be the worst, and even if they manage to overperform, Entity that is, I think they're going to struggle against a team of the caliber of a Black Dragons, which has seen so much international competition already this year and over the tenure of these players, sort of. And on the other side, I think it's about the same thing, right? Nocturnes, they're not necessarily the team that has gone to LAN out of LATAM, but they have beaten that team to get here. So I'm expecting more out of them than I do out of Scylla, who are in a region that has never done well in an international competition before and has lost their best team essentially with Direwolves obviously disbanding this year.
Yeah, but see, that's the matchup on Thursday that I'm looking forward to. Scylla versus Nocturnes. Like you said, Entity Gaming coming from Southeast Asia, being a newer region where in the Black Dragons are be, experience wise the best international team of the land. So there's that matchup. Black Dragons, unless, like you said, Entity overperforms, Black Dragons should come out of that. But the Scylla Esports versus the Nocturnes Gaming, the X factor for me is that Hunter from the LG Direwolves are actually playing for Scylla Esports. That's his new team. Mingu Sayao or whatever, however you say his name, he was the hunter for the LG Direwolves, so he could be very impactful in this set. And if he plays well, I think the set goes 3 games. But if he doesn't, I could see Nocturnes taking this in 2. And like I said, the prize for winning is Team Rival and E United. So yeah, hey, here's you want a set. Goodbye. Have fun.
Yeah, it's definitely more advantageous for those teams to win their first set instead of the second one. At least, like, theoretically, of course. And yeah, I think you're right there. I think the matchup between Nocturnes and Scylla is going to be more even than the one between Black Dragons and Entity, if it ends up being that matchup, right? And the big reason why I probably can't call it definitively so is because Entity is sort of an unknown quantity here in this equation, right? They are a team out of a new region. We haven't seen this region play yet against teams in other regions, so we're not sure, or at least I'm not sure what to expect out of them, how good they're gonna be, but generally not good, and generally that should make the matchup between Nocturnes and Scylla the closer one. But yeah, I'm not expecting any of these teams to go beyond the quarterfinals then, because as you said, Rival and United as a reward for making it there is not a nice thing, and it's going to be very difficult to beat those teams. And I think those are going to prove to be the end of the line for the international teams. I don't think anyone's making it to the semis, really.
If either of if any of the international teams make the semifinals, we might as well chalk that up to one of the biggest upsets in Smite history. Because, like you said, realistically, whoever they play, whether it's Team Rival or E United, they're out without a doubt, way over their heads in the matchup against that. But I think everybody would be hugely surprised if either of these, if any international team makes it to the semifinal.
Yeah, definitely. And I honestly would say, maybe if we're skipping ahead a tiny bit, that if in those quarterfinal matchups, I think a 3-0 in both cases is going to be the most likely result that we're going to see. Oh, it's actually a best of 3, so 2-0.
So it's 2-0.
Yeah. Same thing, really. Just a couple fewer attempts. But yeah. Just because Rival and the United, as both the European and North American champion, those are very good teams. And they should have no issues there.
Yeah, they should have no issue. They could just, by experience and playing as a team, take a team fight or two, but forcing a third game let alone winning the set, forcing a third game would be huge for any of these international scenes, especially against those two teams, the top of EU and the top of NA. Just being able to force a third game would be big for all the regions.
Definitely, yeah. So, I think that's all we can really say, right? Or do we sort of see the performances individually of the teams a bit different from how far we expect them to go? Is there anything else we can say about that? I think we've already talked about how we expect Black Dragons to be the best team out of the international ones, right?
Just looking at where they are and who they potentially have to face in the second round, yeah, they should definitely do the best of the international teams. Well, we've already alluded to it that the meta changes and everything everything Hi-Rez is trying to do to the meta changes might cause Elevate to struggle. So that could favor in Black Dragon's favor. It is best of one. Even if they do lose, though, they got the easier matchup against the Southeast Asia team at Entity Gaming. It's the performance. If they're up to task and if they play well, Black Dragon should perform the best out of the international teams.
Yeah, and I think they will be followed by either Scylla or Nocturnes. And the team I expect least out of is Entity. But yeah, excited to see what the international teams are going to do. Now moving on to the other teams there, the NA and European teams that we're going to be seeing. And there's already a couple of great matchups that we're going to be most likely seeing very early on in the tournament in the quarterfinals. And one of them is going to be most likely, again, unless any upsets happen, between Energy and Luminosity. And that should be a barn burner.
Yeah, if this doesn't go 3, I'm saying one team, in match 2, one team screwed up a team fight and allowed the other team to come in and just take it in 2 games. Like Energy and LG, they should, this should definitely go 3 in my opinion. LG has had such an amazing year. Like I said, Energy has struggled for most part of the year, but if they play like they played at Super Regionals, they should, be ready to go. And every time we see this matchup, Barracuda and Jeff Hinla versus the Energy Boys, always goes the distance. It's always fun to watch. Like you said, it's a barn burner, and that's definitely one of the more exciting quarterfinal matchups we potentially have.
Yeah, it's such a historic matchup by now, right? Because we look back at the last 2 World Championships and we see those teams meeting each other as well in the semifinals both times, right? And both times Energy narrowly took the set 3-2 over the Luminosity roster. Well, they were actually called Cloud9 in Season 2, I think.
Yeah, but it's Jeff and Barrett. It's pretty much the same. Like you expect the same thing out of Jeff and Barrett teams that you do, like, no matter who else is on the team.
Yeah, and that's why it's such an interesting matchup to get, and why it's both a bit of a blessing and a bit of a shame that we're most likely going to be getting it so early in the tournament, right? Because both of those teams haven't been their best, and I don't think both of those teams haven't been the best of their region so far this season. Is why we're going to get it so early. And yeah, I would have loved to see 5 games between those teams, especially if Energy shows up in a big form. It's most likely not what we're going to be getting. It's still going to be an exciting matchup, I think. And yeah, really probably the highlight of Friday, I think the set's going to be on.
Yeah, that should be the highlight of Friday, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, and
both agree on that.
It's the one matchup between EU and NA that we're also going to be seeing that day. At least that we expect to be seeing that day, of course.
And it's Yeah, it's the one NAEU matchup we're going to be seeing on Friday, and it's the probably the one matchup with the most historic rivalry that we get. Luminosity versus Energy, Jeff and Mario versus Emilito and Raffer and Yemen and Adapting. Like, and you throw this is Mask's second year being involved in this rivalry. Like, it should be. This set probably has the potential of being the highlight of the entire tournament.
Yeah, very well could be. I think there's other sets that are going to be in contention for that, but this could definitely be one of them. Yeah. And so, let's talk about what we expect to actually happen within this set, outside of it just generally being likely a close set. What do you think is going to make a difference here, and what's sort of the win condition for both teams, and who do we actually expect to win overall?
I think the matchup that's going to have the most impact is probably the newest matchup of the entire rivalry, and that's Maniac versus Aquarius over there in solo lane. I think whichever player, whichever jungler has, whether it's Adapting or Mask, whoever can help their solo lane, because we've seen how impactful that solo lane can be in the fall split and pretty much throughout the entire season. I think it comes down to that. They're both really good in the late game, and both are really good, team-oriented players. But it's who can get the lead early and who can force that lead early as well. So it's, to me, like I said, it's Aquarius versus Maniac. I don't know if you agree or not, but that's the matchup that's probably going to affect the set overall.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really important one, obviously, because we've talked about it a lot before, that how much jungle pressure, having pressure in solo can translate to, right? And as we said, both Mask and Adapting are very big cornerstones of these teams and can easily have a massive impact in their wins, and a lack of impact can easily lead to losses for both those teams. And yeah, that's why I think solo lane's more important, not necessarily because it's actually gonna come down to a carry competition between Aquarius and Maniac, but more so because it's going to facilitate Adapting and Mask to be the best possible version of themselves. And if they,
that's what I was trying to allude to as well. You're more articulate than I am, I guess. So, but yeah, the solo lane, we both said it's been so important, because not necessarily the carry potential coming out of the solo laner, but the jungle pressure it provides, and where that can translate to multiple buff invades on the speed buff or the blue buff, or ganking the mid laner from behind their own tier 2, tier 1 tower. That just so much pressure comes from that solo lane side of the map. If you can win win that lane and get your jungler in the enemy jungle. So we got Adapting and Mask in this matchup. We got Cherio and not Homie Fame, Scream. We got all these junglers that are so good and so reliant on pressure that it should be just as relevant in the World Championships as it was at Super Regionals.
Yeah, definitely. And once your jungler has pressure, obviously he can translate it to even more pressure everywhere else on the map, right? Start pressuring the mid lane, start pressuring whatever buff there is available on the map, and start pressuring the big objectives that are going to be very important, right? Like the Portal Demon, the Gold Fury, and later on, obviously, the Fire Giant, which can really end you the game. That's basically how Conquest works as a mode these days. And a lot of it is based around jungler pressure, and that's why it's going to be so important, and that's why the solo lane is going to be very important. And then, again, the question I'm really asking myself is, who is going to win? Who's going to end up getting a win here? What do you think?
I think this is the hardest one to call, honestly, because whether you're a fan of NA or EU, this is a matchup that is so much fun to watch, and the difference in the past two sets of these two teams meeting at Worlds have been literally one game. Well, it literally like not just one game, but like one team fight here or there, and that it switches the entire way. And Luminosity's coming out on top, and Energy's no two-time defending world champions. It's literally like one team fight, and Energy's not a world champion in both sets. And so this one's the hardest one to call. Trying to remain objective and not letting my NA bias come through. I do really want to see Luminosity finally get one over Energy. I really do. But it's too close to call. I mean, I can't make predictions on this set because it's literally a coin flip.
So let me ask the question a bit differently. On your season ticket, who do you have? Or who are you going to have?
I had 30k fantasy points before fall split began, so I didn't buy the fall split pack, so I couldn't pick.
Fuck.
It was not worth spending the gems on if I had all the shit.
Yeah, but there's that one skin that you had. Which one is it?
Cupid skin?
Nah, that's a different one, right? Wait, is it a Cupid one?
The Dr. Strangelove Cupid skin is the one you get for the fall bundle.
See, do you not want that amazing Cupid skin?
I don't play Cupid.
Damn it.
I have the big head Cupid skin from the 21 win chest, the godlike chest, but I don't that's
all the Cupid skins you need.
Other than his two recolors, which are he's the only god with two recolors. His normal skin is two recolors, and that skin are the I think I got Little Devil in a chest like last Odyssey.
Yeah. Yeah, well. Let's not talk about Cupid skin.
Like, I didn't have to pick because I didn't buy the season ticket. So, again, I have a little bit of an NA bias, but I would still like to see Luminosity win, but it's too close to call. This is going to be the one set I'm, zoned in on Friday. This is going to be the one I'm watching as closely as anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is close to call. I think you're absolutely right there, and I think it's largely going to come down to which form Energy shows up in. Like we already talked, right? I still expect them to beat Nocturnes, regardless of what form they really show up in, and they would obviously then be in the quarterfinals against LG, regardless of what form they show up in. I think if they have a good form, which, as I said already, is what I expect them to have, I think they're going to take this one. I still think it's going to be close. I think, like you said, it's going to come down to team fights. But I think Energy is able to keep their heads cool, maybe except adapting. But we all know that he goes Super Saiyan whenever he's not got his head cool.
That's something I got to say. It's Super Saiyan when they win. It's crybaby when they lose, right? Like, it all depends on the result of the match, what we call adapting.
Yeah, that's actually true. Yeah. But yeah, I think they're a team that is, especially at a World Championship, always going to be incredibly tough to beat. And despite all the respect that I give to LG for how good they've looked in the fall and how good they've competed against United and how good the step between them and United at Super Regionals was, I think Energy's going to take it. Just considering all the likely scenarios that we see, right? Considering how likely it is that they show up in the form, Energy that is, considering how good both teams have looked so far, and considering how the previous matchups between those teams have gone, I've got to give it to Energy overall. It's very close. Like, when we're talking about maybe 55 to 45% here. but it's got to go to Energy, at least in my opinion. And maybe that is just my EU bias speaking, of course.
Well, talking about EU bias, let's move on to Obey versus Elevate.
I was going to do the same transition. Yeah, the other big set that we're going to be seeing, well, the other big set, because the other sets that we're going to be seeing, the two sets between the champions of EU and NA and the international teams, obviously aren't going to be very closely contested, at least not in our opinion. One set that should be closely contested is going to be most likely going to be Elevate against Obey, and the other quarterfinal on the other side of the bracket, obviously. And yeah, they also have a tiny bit of a history, similarly to...
It's just a tiny bit, huh?
Yeah, well, it's one set instead of two, and it's not at the World Championship.
It's... What's this? 2 seasons Elevate's been in the Pro League now? Just Jermaine and Dardes, like...
Yeah, it's not the same team. They've not been good before this year's summer split.
Not really, but they've been, these two teams have matched up on plenty of occasion. Just Elevate has not been really good on any of the occasions they've matched up, without, with the exception of the Super Regionals matchup. But there's plenty of history here, is what I'm saying. So this is 2 years worth of history.
Yeah, it depends on how you look at it. On land, in Big Land series, there is not a lot of history, but there is one series that was extremely interesting between those two teams, and I think that you have to consider when you talk about how this potential series is going to go.
Well, there's a storyline here, right? Like,
yeah,
this is Elevate's chance to get revenge on Obey, in a set that they probably. A lot of people think they probably should have won at Super Regionals, but Obey, Obey's brain and just knowledge of the game coming from Ataraxia and Emilzy and Pretty Prime and Captain Twig and Zelia, just the smarts they have outsmarted Elevate in Game 3 or Game 4 and 5, and allowed Obey to take the set, and so this is Elevate's chance at revenge there.
Yeah, I think that's the big storyline here, and obviously the other storylines are for the teams individually, right? Elevate is the rising star of European Smite, and if they manage to win this match, there's no telling how far they will go further on in the tournament, right? And on Obey's side, they have been overall probably the most successful, or the second most successful European team this season. So that's a storyline in and of itself. Is going to be seeing how they can transfer that to the World Championship, and whether they're going to be able to actually take it this time around after just making second place last year. And this is going to be the first big important step on that road, or the first, what's it called? First barrier they're going to have to overcome is going to be this Elevate roster. Most likely, again. And that's why I think it's an interesting matchup to see. And obviously, they're both great Smite teams as well. Both have an interesting style of playing the game. Elevate specifically with their Double Hunter, Triple Guardian comps that we saw a lot of, and Obey with how they try to counter that specific lineup. So yeah.
Yeah, this matchup to me, it all comes down to the matchup between Cherio and Captain Twig. If we're just doing that match, that role versus role matchup, we know Jermaine and Dardes and Ataraxia and Emilzy. Jermaine and Dardes are going to want to fight. Ataraxia and Emilzy are trying to outsmart their opponents and just outperform them in skill. Pretty Prime and Death Panther are about as polar opposites in the mid lane as you can get. Pretty Prime likes to play mages and really only prefers to play mages. Death Panther, we've seen him like to play hunters, and when he still plays mages, but like he would prefer to play hunters. Like, so they're polar opposites, and Zelia and Elva, no numbers. Yeah, I was trying to think of his name for a second. That's we know Zelia's performance at past Worlds, which could be a downfall for Obey, but given the rest of how well the rest of the team is, I don't know if it's going to be a huge factor. So it's Captain Twig versus Cherio, in my opinion. We got to see this matchup at Super Regionals, and Captain Twig struggled, of course, but he was still Captain Twig in the end. He still found a way to help his team win. And so that's the matchup I'm watching.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, right? I think Twig is a very integral part of Obey's success as this sort of star jungler that he's turned himself into over the couple of years that he's been playing jungle competitively now. And Cherio, he's always been known as a very good jungler, a potentially very good jungler, right? And as a Lanimal. And if he can show that once again here, then I think they have a good shot at taking the series. And I think there's one thing we need to consider here as well. We already talked about the last time they met, and it was obviously a 3-2 to Obey. But the set, the best of 5, went to 5 games, right? And when you look at the standings during the set, you will notice that Elevate were the first to get a second win under their belt.
Yeah.
So if this set only being a best of 3, that could spell Obey's downfall if the set goes in a similar direction, right?
Yeah. Like I said it before,
yeah.
The longer a set goes, the more your flaws are going to come through. That's why best, if you're a team, like an international team, you like the best of ones because that gives you your best shot at beating the SPL teams. In a best of 3, we did see Elevate get that second win over Obey before Obey was able to win game 4 and 5. So technically, in a best of 3, Elevate wins that set. But every set is different, right? So this going into this best of 3 between Obey and Elevate, it's a little, Elevate may not win that game 3. It's knowledge of the game, it's skill at the game in Obey Alliance versus brute force and talent from Elevate, right? Like Elevate's not going to, they're going to try to draft the way they want to draft, but they're not going. Once they're in game, like they're not going to outsmart Obey. They're going to do they're going to win this set because they're just beating the crap out of you. They're going full throttle, beating the crap out of you. Obey will outsmart you, and so which playstyle plays comes into effect more here in a best of 3.
Yeah, and I think in a best of 3, it's more the raw skill aspect, right? Because you have less time to adjust, and I think Elevate's going to have something prepared. I'm not sure if it's going to be a similar thing to what they showed at Super Regionals, right? But I think they will have more to show us, and if they do, then this is going to be an interesting set, just because.
So what are you saying? Are you with me? Do we agree on who's going to win this set?
Well, Who did you think is going to win this set?
I think it's going to be Elevate. I think Elevate wins 2-1.
Yeah. I think it's going to be close, and yeah, I think Elevate has a slight edge, and it's because of how their last set went, and it's because of how or it's because of why this last set went 2-1 in their favor at first, right? And it was because they had an unorthodox strategy that they brought out, and that they were able to get wins with, and that Obey had to adjust to. If it's going to be the same deal here, right? They have another unorthodox strategy, they're going to bring it out again, and Obey's going to have to adjust again. I think Obey is going to struggle more to adjust within a free game series than they are going to be going to in a 5-set series. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's why.
Less time to adjust to what Elevate wants to bring out, and that's the key there. Like, again, best of threes favors whichever team has the surprises.
Yeah, generally the longer the set is, the less you can rely on just surprising your opponent and winning through that. And a best of 3 gives them a bit more of an advantage than a best of 5 would. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they take it, and yeah, I'm expecting them to take it, but you can never underestimate Obey, of course.
Another thing, I mean, you said Elevate was the rising star of the EU SPL. I kind of disagree and say that's Team Rival, but
oh yeah, true.
just in this matchup, the Obey versus Elevate. Obey's, the spring champions of the SPL. They're the spring Masters champions. They won that land, but they really haven't done a lot since. They got ousted at DreamHack by Rival, who eventually lost to Dignitas, and they got beat again, 3-1 at the hands of a Rival at Super Regionals. Like, they've kind of stalled and grown stale. They haven't really shown anything that says that they're going to do anything more than what they've done at these past lands. Like, are they a good team? Yeah. But it like I said, it's grown kind of stale for Obey.
Yeah, I think they've hit their ceiling, or at least they've stopped progressing as much as the teams below them have, right? I think that's why they've largely been overtaken by the likes of Rival and Dignitas, technically, and most likely Elevate or likely Elevate at this World Championship, right? Because I still think they're improving. I just think they're not improving as much as the other teams are, and yeah.
Do you think Elevate could be this year's enemy?
Maybe, yeah. I could see that happening, right? I could see them making it all the way.
I can see it too. I really could see it. But their matchup, if they win this matchup, their matchup on Saturday, it's going to be something. It's going to be the toughest one they've had all year, in my opinion. But let's wrap this topic up. So we're both taking Elevate here, right?
Yes, but I just want to mention, I think Obey still has a great chance here as well. I think this is a similar scenario as between Luminosity and Energy, right? Because I have faith in Obey's ability to adjust to things. And I think if they get another try, they can manage to do it in just a 3-game set. And if they do, then they're going to be able to win this. And
let's assume Elevate takes game 1 because they pulled out a strategy that Obey wasn't ready for.
I think if they take game 1, then they win the set.
So we get, and if we get into a second game, or when we get into a second game, Obey doesn't necessarily make the right adjustments, but are able to find a win, and it goes to game 3. Do we give? Do either of us see them taking, having enough experience against whatever composition this Elevate team wants to run to, be able to adjust in such a short time frame as in 2 games. It's one game is really, you see it in game 1. You're like, wow, that's really good. How do we adjust to it in game 2? Okay, we didn't really adjust, but we still won the match because, we did what we did and we got lucky here. Going into game 3, what adjustments can we make? Is that enough time for Obey to get a look at this Elevate composition and make the right adjustments?
I think 2 games are enough time, yeah. The thing I do think as well, though, is I think Obey needs to win the first one just due to momentum. Because I think if Elevate has momentum going into game 2, and Obey is starting to make adjustments to their game plan and are starting to find a way to potentially beat it, I don't think they're going to do it. I think the momentum would carry the Elevate roster forward to a second win and to them winning the set 2-0 in that case.
See, we're the exact opposite. I think if Obey wins game 1, Obey wins the set 2-0. I think if Elevate wins game 1, I think the set goes 3 games, but Elevate still pulls it out. I don't. If Elevate's weird composition, strange compositions that they like to run, doesn't surprise Obey in game 1 and pick up a win in game 1, I think Obey just wins it in 2 games.
Well, I think they have adjustments they can still make after game 1, right? I think Elevate is going to go into game 1 with their composition and try to figure out a way to play their composition against Obey specifically. And once they've done that, once the game 1's done, and even if they lose, they're going to have a better game plan going into game 2. And I think they're going to have a better game plan of how to play their comp against Obey, or their type of comp against Obey, than Obey is going to have at playing against it.
Are you familiar with boxing?
What?
Are you familiar with boxing or any kind of fight,
Not really.
sport?
No.
Well, take boxing for example. The two fighters in a ring. Clearly, somebody's going to be the favorite if it's one of the best versus a mid of the run competitor. The only way the middle, that middle ground competitor has a chance is if he comes out swinging and knocks the superstar boxer out with one punch in the first round. That analogy is what I see this matchup going. If Obey's that prize fighter, Elevate's the challenger. If Elevate comes out and lands a solid blow and knocks him off in game 1, I think Obey's in trouble. If Obey weathers that storm in game 1 and wins game 1, I think Obey takes it 2-0 in the end.
Well, see, I think in that example you're sort of underestimating Elevate, right? I don't think it's a big difference between the caliber of fighter that Obey is and the caliber of fighter that Elevate is. And I think if you look at it from this direction, then they can both make adjustments going into the later games. And I think if Obey is able to win the first game, Elevate comes back in game 2 because they make bigger adjustments, because they have more stuff prepared than Obey does, and Obey is generally more going to be on the back foot than Elevate is.
Yeah, I think we're talking ourselves out of picking Elevate right now.
No, I'm still picking Elevate, right? I think they'll either 2-1 or they'll 2-0. That's my point.
Well, I'm the more I talk, the more I'm talking myself out of Elevate. But right now, I'm still picking Elevate in this matchup.
Yeah, just let me.
I said, if they come out and land a big blow and put Obey on the back foot by winning game one, I think Elevate takes the set. If Obey survives game one, I think Obey ultimately wins the set. So to me, it's all about who wins that first game.
See, I'm just gonna go through my scenario that I have laid out, right, and try to explain it to you why I think Obey loses if they don't win the first game. So, okay.
And I'm with you there.
Yeah.
On that.
Yeah, but I think Obey can also still lose while winning the first game.
And that's where we disagree.
See, and here's the thing, right? I think the team that loses a game is generally going to make more adjustments going into the next one, right? And the team that wins the game is going to have more momentum. The team that loses the game is going to be more faced by that loss necessarily than the team that won the game is. Yeah, obviously. So here's the deal, right? I think this matchup specifically is going to be Obey trying to counter what Elevate is going to throw at them. And that immediately puts Obey on the back foot in that matchup, right? See what I'm saying?
Yes.
In that situation, if Obey manages to win the first game, there's two ways they can look at it, right? First is, yeah, we know how to counter it. It worked the first time. Let's do the same thing again. The second way they can look at it is, yeah, it worked this time. We got lucky. We need to change things. And generally, I think they're going to be more lying towards the the former, right? Where they think they have a way to counter it, and they think that they can win the next game as well. But I think they'll be wrong. Because I think Elevate, knowing that they will be on the forefront, or that they will have to set the direction of the set, is going to have more than one thing prepared, is going to have adjustments ready based on how Obey played the first set. And if they do, they'll win game 2. You get what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, I just don't agree with it. So yeah.
And if they win game 2, then it's going to come down to what adjustments Obey can make for game 3, and if they're going to be enough, and if Elevate's going to find even more tiny adjustments that they can make going into game 3. And then it's going to come down to the question whether that's going to be enough. And I don't think it will be. So that would be my scenario, right? My scenario would be Obey win the first game narrowly, then Elevate reverse sweep them, or second scenario that I'm suggesting, Obey lose the first game, lose the second one because they don't have the momentum, they still can't adjust heavily enough, they were never close enough to beating Elevate's strategy. And the first scenario is Obey win game 1, get countered in game 2, and then manage to adjust for game 3 and win it. That's the likelihood at which I sort of rate it. And the least likely scenario for me is that Obey immediately has a counter to what Elevate's going to be bringing, and they just win the game 2-0 at a set 2-0 because Elevate has no more adjustments to be made.
See, we're two different strains of thought here. I'm very much think that if Elevate fails to win game 1 with whatever crazy strategy they bring out, I think Obey rides that momentum to a game 2 win as well.
See, I think because they're the team on the back foot, that they aren't as heavily faced by having positive momentum, and are more heavily faced by having negative momentum. Because if they're put in a situation where they have to adjust, I think Obey's going to struggle more with that than Elevate is. Because Elevate from the beginning is going into the set thinking we have to decide what to do, and if it's not working, we have to change it, and we can change it. Obey is going into the set thinking, we have built this defense, we have built up our castle, it's going to hold, and if it doesn't hold, there will be panic. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I kind of see. I see the scenario you're painting for me. Yeah. So we're still like we're in the end we're both still picking Elevate to win. Or we you think it's just it's going to be a little bit more in Elevate's favor. I just think it's comes down to the first game. And I think Elevate wins that first game. But we're both still picking Elevate here. That's the bottom line of it.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's assuming Rival and E United both win their internationals against their international opponents. That sets up a scenario where on Saturday, and since I said I'm hoping Luminosity can beat Energy, that's just the team I'm going to pick or team I'm going to put in this matchup. So it'll be on Saturday. For me, it'll be Rival versus Luminosity, and E United versus Elevate. For you, you got a little bit of different one. You got Rival versus Energy.
Yeah.
How do we see those matchups going?
Yeah, I think those are going to be interesting ones as well, right? And I think the difference between EU and NA is going to be playing more of a role here than in necessarily the other matchups that we would have had between NA and EU so far. And yeah, obviously, Rival are the European champions. They're basically the best what EU has to offer right now against a Luminosity roster that has looked good, but that hasn't looked as amazing as I think Rival has, right? And even if they manage to beat Energy, I think a lot of it is going to be down to Energy not showing up in top form, or this just being a matchup that they have now adjusted to, right, after losing it 2 times in a row in narrow fashion. And I think in that scenario, I can see this being in the favor of Rival a bit more than I see it being in the favor of LG necessarily.
LG or Energy, or what you're saying?
LG. Well, assuming LG is in the semis, right, over Energy. I think Energy is not going to show up in top form if that is is not going to have showed up in top form if that is the case, right? And in that case, I don't see how everything I've seen from this Luminosity roster so far and everything I would have to see from them to be able to defeat Energy at the World Championship would be enough to beat Rival in the semis.
This, particularly in the Rival versus LG matchup, it's about LAN experience versus Lanimals, right? Rival is the Lanimals team.
Yeah.
Where Jeff and Barra and Mass, since they've been a team, haven't missed a LAN, or have Jeff and Barra in particular have only missed the one LAN at last year's DreamHacks in Sweden. It's the only LAN they've missed, so they got plenty of LAN experience. They brought in Baskin in the mid lane at the beginning of the season. He's a superstar. You got a talented jungler in Mask. Aquarius has been a nice addition. It's still, to me, it's Rival, the Rival we're used to seeing at LAN events. Because if that's the case, I don't expect LG to put up much of a fight. They might win one game, but just based off of experience alone. But if Rival is not the Lanimals at this world that they have been, then yeah, LG, just talent wise, LG should have the upper hand
Yeah.
just based on skill wise. But if it, like you said, Rivals, the landable team, they show up at LAN and beat pretty much anybody in their way. If that's not the case here, though, because I do expect them to beat their international competition, no matter who it is. But if that's not the case here, and they end up facing either LG or Energy, whoever wins that matchup, if they don't show up in their Lanimal form, their evolved, Lanimal like third stage of evolution kind of thing play style that they do at LAN, I don't think this is going to work. I think LG and Energy have the upper hand on the rival team. But if rival shows up like they do, then rival's going to win this 3-1, no matter who it's going to be.
Yeah, and I think there's little reason to assume they're not going to be showing up in Lanimal form, right?
Yeah, we have no reason not to assume that they're going to be that way.
Yeah. So that's why I have little hope for LG, because rival on LAN in form are just complete beasts, right? They have risen so far in this season, and right, you're definitely right. There are the rising stars when you look at the entire season, and not Elevate. And yeah, I think I'm not sure what to say, right? I think if they show up in LAN form, as I said, it's going to be tough for LG. It's also going to be tough for Energy. But I think Energy has that extra gear that they can kick it into, right? We have seen how far they've developed going from the fall split, the regular fall split, to super regionals. If their development between then and the World Championship mirrors that even anywhere closely, they should have a shot at this. Do you agree?
Oh, yeah, 100% agree. Again, it's talent-wise, like individual player-wise, they're not going to match up against LG or Energy very well any day of the week, except for maybe outside of the Deathwalker solo lane. Deathwalker should have advantage against everybody in the solo lane, except for maybe Benji. But, talent-wise across the board, across the entire team, Rival should not match up with Energy or LG. But it's a different, it's a different team on LAN. And so their experience on LAN and the way they've grown to be these beasts on LAN should just give them the upper hand against either of these two teams.
Yeah.
But straight up skill wise, I don't think they match up against LG or Energy.
Yeah, that's definitely the case, right? Just on raw skill, there is no way you can expect them as a 5-man unit or as 5 individual players to match the individual players of the other teams. But as you said, Smite's a game that is played in a team, and as a team, they can easily match up, I think. Unless Energy goes absolute beast mode, and I think there's potential there for that to happen still.
Yeah. We will, we'll put an asterisk by this. If they play like a 5-man unit and they play out of their minds like they're used to be playing, outside of a Herculean, 3-time World Championship effort from Adapting and Energy, just running the table and doing, what they do at Worlds. That's, outside of those two scenarios where one Energy's outplaying out of control and beating everybody, or Rival just shows up and destroys everybody they play. That's the only way Rival loses. Like, they should 5-man unit, they match up against better than any other team they're going to play. 5-man unit, I don't think anybody, even E United, matches up well against them. If they're playing individual Smite, which there's no reason to believe that they're going to be playing individual Smite because they haven't before on plans, but they do not match up against anybody else in this tournament very well. Whether it's Obey, Elevate, E United, Luminosity, or Energy. But as a 5-man unit, they're the best team in the world.
Yeah, I think so as well. Right, we saw similar stuff out of Dig. They just had superstar players, and they're obviously not going to be here because they fell apart. I think they are the one team that can compete with Rival if they're playing at their top level, if both teams are doing that right. I mean, we saw that at the summer finals. Outside of that, I think Rival's pretty clearly the best team in the world. And yeah, Energy has the potential to be better than them, though, I think. Because they've been in the past, and they have shown that they have an extra gear whenever the World Championship rolls around.
Yeah, agreed. If Energy is Energy, and they've kicked it into that championship gear, like you said, even a 5-man unit, godly 5-man unit like Rival is, has little shot against them. But if that's not the case, if Energy's not in that gear, then they're not going to do it. And Rival's moving on to the finals. I think whether it's LG or Energy, do you have Rival in the finals?
Yes.
Okay, we both agree on that then.
I'd say against LG it is about a 75 to 25 split, right? So 3-1. In 3 or 4 cases, I think they win against LG, and I think against Energy it's probably going to be around 60-40% overall, the chances to win.
I agree.
Yeah, and obviously the 40% for Energy are really just because they have a potential to show up in absolute beast mode. And yeah,
Energy is kind of the outlying team on everybody's mind, because they do have we've seen them have an extra gear with, for the lack of a better analogy, they have an extra gear that they can go to that nobody else has.
Yeah.
And if they go there, I've already said it once, they're 3-time world champions. If they don't go there, we're going to have a new champion this year.
Yeah, and their road's going to end at the semifinals. Yeah. Well, one more thing I want to say, just about this matchup, maybe to go into the intricacies a bit more as well. I think we've already talked about how reliant both of those teams, right, LG and Energy, are on their junglers and due to this on their solo laners as well, because as we said already, solo lane pressure translates into jungle pressure, translates into everywhere pressure. I think that's a big aspect that plays a role in this matchup as well, because you have probably the best solo laner in the world right now in the solo lane for Rival in Deathwalker.
Arguable. That's arguable, but
yeah, he's in contention at least.
He's definitely. If he's not the best, he's one of the 2 best. So yeah.
Yeah.
But
top 2 solo laner.
If you're going that route, we have seen Ice Baby at times struggle even with Deathwalker going off.
Yeah. See what I think what I think the bigger impact is going to be, Deathwalker being Deathwalker and being as good as he is going to make it very hard for either Mask or Adapting to go off in this set. If you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. But I think in this one situation, this one position, if Deathwalker goes off and Ice Baby struggles, I think the pressure Deathwalker can generate is not as impactful, and either Mask or Adapting can still fight into that because Ice Baby is struggling. See what I'm saying?
Yep, definitely.
Like if Ice Baby's not on his game, doesn't matter what Deathwalker is doing, Adapting and Mask are really good at their jungle positions, two of the best in the world, can still fight into that, and it becomes a much more even matchup.
Yeah. See, I just wanted that mentioned because I think that's a big part of the reason why this matchup is as heavily in favor of Rival as well, or at least why we think it's so heavily in favor of them. And yeah, obviously the rest of the team, as we already said, is just on raw skill gonna be worse, but as a unit, they can perform better. And yeah, moving on to
one thing I want to say about the LG though, the LG match versus Rival matchup, is LG scrims exclusively with E United. They're scrim partners. They don't scrim with anybody else. They just scrim with each other. So if Rival struggles against Luminosity for whatever reason, they could be, if they end up playing E United in the finals, that could be something to watch for.
Interesting, yeah.
But speaking of E United,
yeah,
E United versus
was going to do the same transition. Go ahead.
This is, if Elevate versus Obey was brute force versus brains, this is brute force and brains versus brute force.
Yeah.
Because I think E United is smart, especially the Polar Bear Mike and Scream and the way they look at games. And they're all of E United talented in their individual roles. But the shot callers on the team, which a lot of people, a lot of teams turn to their jungler and their supports for shot calling. If the two smartest people on your team are your shot callers, you're in a good position. And so, I don't think Elevate can hope to win this matchup against E United just by simply going toe to toe in a fight, because that's not going to happen. E United is arguably more talented than Elevate and can fight better than Elevate. So it should be if you like fighting, if you like to watch massive team fights and a lot of fighting, this is going to be a fun match to watch.
Yeah, but I think so as well.
I still think I would still give E United the edge.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure about that. I think the set is also going to be one that could be heavily contested, right? And I think it's going to be because if Elevate brings in a strategy that cannot be defeated by Obey through adjustments in a free game set, I think that United's going to struggle against it in a similar way, right? Because I don't think they're a team that really adjusts quickly within sets. I don't think we've seen enough from them in that regard just yet, right? So far, the sets that they've had, the most they've done is sort of copied the strategy that an Elevate has run.
Let me ask you this. If E United and Obey were to fight, were to match up, regardless of who wins the set, who do you want in just a team fight? You want Obey's roster or E United's roster? Just a straight up 5v5 team fight. Most people are going to pick E United in that situation.
Yeah, probably.
And so you're putting a team that can team fight against another team that can team fight.
Yeah, but that's not all that Elevate can do, right?
No. Yeah, but again, I say it's brute force. Elevate's going to want to bring out a composition that, they're just going to hit W on, and they're going to push forward and fight over everything, every little thing. E United does the same thing, and E United is arguably better at it.
Well, I'd say they're better at team fights. I wouldn't necessarily say they're better at choosing where to fight and fighting defensively, right? I think See, I think the interesting aspect here is that the teams are so similar in that regard that they are very aggressive, and I think that's what makes them very different from. It makes this very different from the other matchup that we could see if Obey were to advance. It's going to be that both of those teams are going to want to be on the forefront, right, and not on the back foot or anything, like we talked about in the Elevate against Obey set. And I want to see how Elevate plays into that, because that's sort of a different style of opponent than they faced so far, right? When you look at Super Regionals, they faced Obey, then they went to the Wildcards bracket, where they also faced NA teams that generally play a bit more from the back foot than from the forefront, right? And this is going to be a matchup that is stylistically going to be very different.
Yeah, and E United hasn't been on the back foot very much this fall split. Still, the only team that has defeated them is their scrim partners in LG. This is the only team that have beat them all since the summer split. And now you're transitioning a team that is really good in the solo lane, has one of the best junglers in the world in the jungle, is a very smart support in PBM, and one of the best hunters in the world in Pandacat. And I don't like no numbers against Benji. That's like we said it with Deathwalker. Benji's that other solo lane that's one of the two best in the world. So that matchup, that's not going to go in no numbers favor. Cherio, even if Cherio is really a Lanimal in his own right, Scream is too. Scream does awesome at land, so that's like a wash. And just individual matchup wise, E United's more talented.
Yes, I agree with that. But we talked about the same thing in the last matchup, right? And we concluded that the team that is individually more talented might not always win.
They're individually more talented in Elevate, and they play as a unit. Overall, they play as a unit very well. If both teams, like Elevate plays well as a unit too, if both teams play well as a unit, then it comes down to straight talent.
And it comes down to one last aspect that I think we need to point out as well, and that is strategy. And that has always been Elevate's biggest selling point, right? That's why they took Obey to 5 games at Super Regionals. That's why they are here at the World Championship. It's not necessarily because they have insane pure mechanical skill. It's not necessarily because they have insane teamwork that supersedes everyone else in the league, in the world, right? It's because they have unorthodox strategies, and because they can bring them out, and because teams aren't necessarily going to be prepared for them enough to the point where they can beat a worse team running those strategies. And that then makes them a better team. And I think if United is going to lose this set, it's going to be because they don't manage to adapt enough to what Elevate's going to be bringing out.
The strategy is definitely, if we're matching just up on strategy as being the X factor, yeah, Elevate has the edge, but E United can play these strategies too. They're not. You're not going to be able to just pick a strategy and go up against E United's proven strategy and expect to win a majority of the time. It's Ho Yi, Pandacat's going to want Ho Yi. Benji's going to want either Kakulin or RDO. Matt, or not Matt, but Scream, Bariziel, he has his god pulls, and he's going to pick, whoever it is he wants to pick, and they're going to play that composition, that strategy, the strategy they've been using the entire split split extremely well. And so strategy-wise, triple tank, double hunter for Elevate against E United on their top picks, getting every pick that they want, I still give E United the edge.
Yeah, but it is easier. So there's two things here, right? If United's going to be running the same strategy and not going to be bringing any big innovations to the table, first of all, you can devise a system to beat that strategy, right? That has been done in the past, and it's not like the strategy that they are running, United, is completely unbeatable, right? We've seen LG do it in 2 games after the 5-game set that we saw. And yeah, their scrim partners, they have a lot more opportunity to adapt to what they're bringing, but other teams can still do it. And Elevate has proven to be a team that can run strategies that specifically work well against the other teams in their competition, right? If they bring something specifically for United, or if what they're bringing works just naturally well against the United, I think they still have a shot at this. And then the other thing is, even if they try to adopt the strategy that Elevate's going to be bringing, right? It's one thing to find a counter to a strategy within a set. It's another thing entirely to devise a way to play that strategy yourself in a set, right? And United's strategy itself generally is a bit more reliant on specific picks than necessarily Elevate's is, right? Elevate, we've seen them run many different picks and many different combinations of the triple tank, double hunter strategies.
You say that, but E United has gotten pretty much every pick they wanted, regardless. Like on very few occasions in a full split has Hoagie been banned against Panda Cat, which I don't know if teams lost their memo or whatever it was when they played against E United. But if it was like, if there was one guy that didn't want Panda Cat to have, it was Hoagie, and teams just kept letting him through and letting Panda Cat have it. So, yeah, is it reliant on picks? Yes. But no team has caught on yet.
Yeah, even Elevate might.
You and me, we definitely caught on to it, but like, we don't get paid. Like, we're not getting paid to play. Like, nobody else has caught on to that yet. They still think they can beat Panda Cat when he's on Hoagie, and nobody has done it yet. Hell, in Emilito, we saw at the Energy Invitational in Season 3, Emilito versus Panda Cat, and even Emilito was giving Panda Cat props on Hoagie. Like, the pick, yes, it's reliant on picks, but nobody has caught on to it yet. And if you're E United is arguably just as smart at the game as Obey is, and they can team fight just as well as Elevate does. So you're getting the best of both against a team, against Elevate. I think E United can outfight them, and they're smarter than them, or they're smarter at the game than them. That's why I'm giving E United the edge in a 3-1 victory in this set.
I want to discuss this some more, to be honest.
You're supposed to remain unbiased.
Yeah, I am unbiased, right? I'm just talking about the scenario overall. Right, when you point out that Hui is a very important pick for United, I would point out to you that it's the same thing for Elevate. So what makes you think that they're guaranteed the Hui pick in this specific case? What makes you think that Elevate's not going to be banning it? Because they see it as a threat.
Because honestly, if it's an important pick for Elevate too, neither team is going to want to ban it and want to first pick it.
Yes, on the one hand, sure. On the other hand, if you're not first pick, you might still ban it to get it out of the pool.
And then you're trying to figure out who's better, Jermaine or Panda Cat.
Yeah, Jermaine can be better. Like if he goes off. I think that's a closer matchup than you're making it out to be honest.
I think Panda Cat has clearly established himself as one of the top hunters in North America.
And I think Jermaine has clearly established himself to be one of the top hunters in EU.
But he's not the top. You know, you still got Ataraxia and guys like Emilito and what Arkle.
Yeah. And in NA you still have Barracuda.
That's the really only competition for Panda Cat. I don't count Zapman anymore.
Yeah, sure. He's not at Worlds, so.
I don't know. I don't count Zapman at all.
Yeah, yeah, but see, I think Jermaine is also a. I would put him over Ataraxia at this point, just on raw mechanical skill, right? And I would put him over. Who else did you mention? Emilito and Arkle is hard. But he's up there with them, I think. Then you have Dardus, which I would say is, just based on individual skill, better than Polar Bear Mike.
I don't know about that one, but it's close, yeah.
Or at least his playstyle.
I think the support role is a lot closer than the hunter role. I'm still giving Panda Cat the edge over Jermaine.
I don't think I do. I think Panda's good, but I think Jermaine is also amazing. They're both amazing hunters. And yeah, then you look towards mid, right? You have both mids that can play the hunter picks, which could be important. But I think Def Panda's better at that, and I think Venenu, it's Venenu, right? In mid for United. I think he is better at the mages. Overall, I think he's a bit better than Def Panther. Then you look at the jungle. Cherio is only better if he pops off. Solo lane, Benji's clearly better. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we disagree on the duo lane a little bit, but we agree on every other role. Like Scream is better than Cherio. Just normal.
Unless he
normal
pops
matchup.
off.
Yes, I was saying. In a normal matchup, Scream's better than Cherio. Cherio pops off. Scream then has to pop off to match Cherio. And if they both pop off, I'm still giving that edge to Scream. Benji is clearly better than no numbers. And Venenu and Death Panther is a little bit closer than I think everybody is expecting it would be. But if it's mage matchup, I'll give the edge to Venenu. Even arguably even in the hunter versus hunter matchup, because Venenu used to be a hunter himself. So it could be that even the hunter or the double hunter meta that Elevate likes to run could also play into E United's favor, because Venenu used to be a hunter himself, a professional hunter.
Yeah. Not sure how to call this one, to be honest. I think it's almost certainly going to be a 3-2.
I still think it's 3-1 E United.
And I think the 3-2 is a bit more likely towards E United than towards Elevate. I'd say maybe 53 to 47%. I think it's close. I think it's very close, to be honest.
I think, like I said, I do think United takes this 3-1. I do think it's going to be a good matchup, and I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth between the two. I think, though, E United, the double hunter, triple guardian style that Elevate likes to run has to be taken advantage of in the mid game before the hunters get full build, and while the guardians transition from that powerful early game to the somewhat weaker late game, but they're more tankier. If you can catch them in that mid game, I think that's where you can take advantage of and beat the composition.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I think E United is better at that, where they can fight early and they can fight well early and get such a big lead going into the mid game where they can end it before that Elevate composition takes over and becomes somewhat unbeatable.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure they can, and I'm not sure that they can do it consistently, right? Because fighting to establish that sort of lead, you need to fight into the Guardians early on, and that is a very difficult thing to do, like we talked about already. I think last week it was. And yeah, I think that could give them an advantage, and that's disregarding the fact that Elevate could bring out something new, right? We weren't really expecting to see a whole lot of double Guardian, triple Guardian, double Hunter going into Super Regionals. They could bring out something new that they can still play as well, that is innovative again, right? I think if you assume that that's all they're going to bring is what they've brought at Super Regionals, then yeah, United's going to win. But then I don't think they're going to beat Obey in the first place.
I'm not assuming that's the only strategy there, but given recent changes to the items and to the gods, I still expect to see it. I don't think it's going to be the only one. I still think that triple Guardian double Hunter is still going to be relevant somewhat. So it's not going to be as powerful as it was at Super Regionals. I still think we're going to see it at least a couple times in this. And it's still a pretty good strategy to run, right? It's not like it's been nerfed in the ground where you can't run it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think they can bring out something different though, and I think they can at least tweak their double Guardian, triple Guardian, double Hunter comp to a point where it's still going to be hard to adapt to it.
I think you're right in one way, and I think what another factor could be is if Obey forces Elevate to reveal all their cards.
Yeah.
If Elevate still wins that matchup, but Obey forces them to show their entire their entire hand of strategies, then I don't think it's going to be as big of a factor in the United set as you're making it out to be. If Obey can force that from them, force Elevate to show everything they have in that one set, the United is going to be prepared for.
Yeah. But go ahead.
You go on.
Okay. And I don't think they will necessarily have to, or I think they will have more tweaks prepared to specifically counter E United, right? Because they know that they're on the same side of the bracket overall. So I think they have the expectation that they're going to face them, and they can prepare stuff for that, and they can look into how United plays and figure out a way that they can build their comp, or that they can tweak their comp around that to then have a better chance against United overall. And I think Elevate's a team that is able to do that, right? Because they are a creative team, and they are a team that innovates. And if they manage to do that, then they're going to be in the semis, and they're going to be facing United, and they're going to have a good chance at beating them. Or, if they don't, they're going to lose to Obey in the quarters. And potentially Black Dragons. See? So I think I think this is this. Yeah.
Road for Elevate ends with E United, I think, though. I think we both.
I think it's more likely. I think it's more likely than the other way around. But I don't think it's a guarantee. And there's one more thing I want to talk about.
Well, nothing's really a guarantee in the Smite World Championships, is it?
Yeah, true.
Like any team can really hoist that hammer at the end of the weekend. But if we're going on what we've seen in the past and just how the split overall has unfolded, the more inconsistent team has been Elevate in this matchup. If it's Elevate versus E United, inconsistency has been Elevate because they beat Energy and they lose to Burrito. Like,
yeah,
that's weird. Like, even for somebody who doesn't really follow the league but knows that Energy's a 2-time world championship and Burritos dragging their bags around in the dirt knows that that's weird. So,
well, they lost to Burrito with Mr. Stefan, and at the start of the split, they've improved since.
If we're looking at the body of work as a whole, in which team should have the edge, then E United should have the clear edge here. But there are a lot of X factors here.
I don't think it's clear, but I agree. And there's one more thing I want to talk about, because I already said that I think we both said that we think the Obey against Elevate set could be a close one as well. So I want to touch on the potential other set we could be seeing here as well, which would be United against Obey, right? And I think things are a lot different there because, as we talked about already, United, Elevate, both teams that are looking to be on the forefront, whereas Obey likes to play a bit more of a passive style and try to just farm up and try to beat you in the late game and outlast you and beat you there, right?
And that's not a strategy that works well against E United, right? E United likes to build an early lead, and if you're more of a passive team and you're going to give them that lead, like, they're going to build a massive lead, and it's going to be a struggle for you to fight into them come later.
See, I think that's not the case. I think Obey is a team that is generally not gonna let opponents get massive leads, right? I think that's sort of what they have established themselves as.
You're comparing styles here. You're saying Obey likes to play the passive and farm up. United likes to play aggressive in the early game and get a huge gold lead. If both of those are matching up against each other, Obey is going to have to make a change. Obey is going to have to do something to not allow E United to grow such passive lead. Because if that's the case, like, if Obey is as passive as you're saying they are, they're just going to keep giving up E United. They're going to keep giving things up to E United that, that's their play style. That they're passively just, they're farming up, they're doing things, but E United's, also pushing into the tier 1 at 4 minutes and starting Gold Fury fights at 6 minutes, and it's that passive style would not work against E United. You'd have to change your style completely.
I think it does, because they don't play passive in the sense that they just give things up. They play passive in the sense that if they're not looking to fight, they're not gonna just give things up. They're gonna look for farm elsewhere, right? And they're gonna get it. We saw fucking Twig farming back harpies at like 2 minutes when the other team was invading his speed or something, right?
Yeah.
And that's the style that Obey likes to play. Obey likes to, if they can't fight you, they will go where you aren't and get everything there where you aren't and where you can't defend it. And I think that's what makes what's made them a good team, right?
What you're alluding to is not so much of a passive playstyle; it's a counter playstyle.
Yeah, it's passive because they're not looking for fights, right?
they're not looking for fights, but they're also not looking just to give things up. They're looking to counter your aggression with a little aggression of their own.
Yeah,
Like
but
you said,
see,
they're
see,
giving up speed buff. Like if Obey's giving up speed buff, but they're also invading the red and purple on the enemy side. They're counter aggressing. They're not necessarily playing passive. They're not fighting you, which is passive, but it's also not like they're just avoiding you completely.
yeah, but that's the game plan, right? That's basically the game plan. United's game plan is to go into your jungle and come to where you are, and if you are there, they fight you. If you're not there, then they just take everything that they can. Obey's playstyle, on the other hand, is really to go to find out where you are, where the enemy team is, go somewhere else, get everything there without having to fight, generally. That's what I mean in passive, right? If your style of playing passive is to just give everything up, then that's not really a playstyle, that's just bad play.
Yeah.
And I think
And
Obey's style, the main difference is Obey isn't necessarily going to fight you if you show up. Obey's just going to keep you from showing up in the first place. Because they'll either know that you are somewhere else and can't show up in the first place, or they will force you back.
Yeah, and you make it. I mean, that's a good point. But if we've already established this, if everything's even, everything else is even, and Obey has successfully countered your aggression with invade somewhere else, and we're going into that mid to late game on an even slate. It becomes who is the better team fighter, and we've established that we both agree United's the better team in a straight up fight.
Yeah, and see, that's where I disagree with one of the earlier points you made, where you said that you think United is as smart of a team as Obey is, because I think Obey is the smarter team still.
Yeah, maybe I said it wrong. Obey is still probably the smartest team in the league. But E United is not too far behind them. E United is one of the smarter teams in the league. They're not Obey. I will say that, but it's not like there's a huge gap between them and Obey. There's a larger gap between Obey and everybody else than there is E United and Obey. Like Obey is the smartest team. I think E United might be the second smartest team in the league.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. What I would agree with is that in a raw fight they can't win, and that they're not stupid, right? United's not a stupid team. I still think though that the difference between intelligence in the play itself can still give Obey an advantage over United, right?
I agree with that.
And I think when it comes to late game, it doesn't just come down to team fights, right? It comes down to a lot of other stuff as well, and it comes down to positioning to a large degree.
But like I said, I agree with Obey being the smarter team in that matchup.
Yeah.
But it's not as a wide of a gap with E United as compared to it would be with somebody else. Like the knowledge of both teams are smart. They have a great understanding and knowledge of the game. If we're ranking them just on how innovative, or not innovative, because if innovative was the thing, Elevate would be the champions of that. But if it was just knowing the meta, knowing the game inside and out, what abilities do what, and which gods counter which god, Obey has that edge, but E United is not far behind.
Yeah, and I think in a similar regard, the raw team fight ability, right? I think United has an edge, but Obey is not too far behind. And I think when you combine both, you can end up in a scenario where both teams are about even, and where it is a close matchup between both of them.
And if Obey ends up playing against E United in the semifinals, I do think it's a little bit more even than it is E United versus Elevate, because of that factor that Obey brings in the being able to outsmart their opponents, and also being very good in the team play. Like, these are just comparing the two. If we're just ranking the two, Obey's the smarter team, with E United right behind them in that regard. E United's the better team fighting team, with Obey right behind them in team fighting regards. So if we're they're two very similar teams, is what I'm trying to say.
Just
Where,
with different styles. Yeah.
yes, just with different styles. Elevate brings that surprise factor, and if just based on where they're playing, Elevate will be playing Obey in the quarterfinals. It's not if they advance past Obey in the quarterfinals. How many, what surprises are they going to have left for United? There shouldn't be as many, because United is going to have, at that point, going to have at least 2 games of film, if not 3 games, if Obey can't force a third game. So the surprises are. There's not going to be a surprise factor. There's not going to be a huge surprise factor with Elevate.
I think that factor would still be there, right? Because I expect
it's still going to be there. Yes, I agree. It's still going to be there,
and it could still be enough.
It's not going to be like huge, like a huge factor there, though. It could still very well be enough, but it's not going to be like a huge factor. Like, the surprises aren't going to be as impactful.
I wouldn't necessarily say
maybe
that.
Maybe I'm saying it wrong. And their bag of tricks, and Elevate's bag of tricks, and maybe they don't pull anything tricky and they just try to beat everybody on raw skill and talent. Maybe they do that. But if they do what we expect them to do and pull out some, innovate something strange and weird and catches some teams off guard, the further you get into the tournament, the harder that's going to be, because these teams are going to be able to set and watch you and watch what you have in your bag of tricks. And they're not going to be as surprised when you pull it out as maybe somebody in the previous round is going to be.
Yeah, sure. What I think, though, is Elevate bring a different style of trick than the regular trick is, right? They don't have an airy solo, they just have a strategy that can be changed and adapted and can work in multiple different scenarios and under multiple different circumstances, and can change depending on opponent, and can whatever, right? Their bag of tricks isn't just a card with a trick written on it. It's a giant spreadsheet with everything laid out of how you actually play what composition against what composition. I don't know. Right? I think that's the difference. I think we saw at Super Regionals that their default composition of triple Guardian double Hunter was almost impossible to beat. The only way they were beaten was by forcing them off of those picks. But later in the tournament, they adapted and wouldn't let themselves be forced off those picks anymore.
Well, I want to bring up, I watched the Latinum finals with Nocturnes and whoever there was that played against. Nocturnes ran the same exact strategies Elevates do. Does that mean Nocturne has the edge against Energy? Or does Energy, based on raw skill alone and talent that Energy has, do they overcome that strategy, that triple tank double hunter strategy?
Yes.
So it doesn't come down, what you're saying there is it doesn't necessarily come down just to that strategy, to a certain strategy.
Yeah.
That there's still that level of skill involved in the game.
Yeah, but we talked about this already between the two teams, and I think it's closer than you think it is. Right, because I value Tremaine more highly than you do, and I value Dardus more highly than you do.
But I still think, at this point, which in the semifinals, I think the whole spreadsheet of tricks is going to be, for the most part, seen. They're already going to they're already going to have seen most of that what's on that spreadsheet, and so they're going to be more adaptable to whatever Elevate brings out.
See, that's what I disagree with. I think a regular trick is spent in 3 or 4 matches, right? In a 5-game set, you could bring a trick once and it's done. Rival couldn't have brought out Ares Walker once more again, like another time in that set against Dignitas, right? Elevate's strat can be adapted, or at least their old one could be adapted, and I think their new one could be will be able to be as well. And if they manage to do that, then it's not going to be easy for E United to adapt to it, and then it could make a difference regardless of what E United does, right? E United isn't going to be able to find the perfect adaptation to the strategy within a 5-game set because that perfect adaptation doesn't exist. That's the power of a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet adapts to your adaptation, basically.
Yeah, but it's like what we saw with Obey at Super Regionals. The longer the set goes, the less the strategy is effective. The more times you get to see it, the less it becomes impactful. So if this does go best of 5, you're still saying E United takes it, correct?
Yeah. I think E United's more likely to take it. Yeah. I don't think it's as even as you say. I don't think it's more even than you say.
I think E United wins 3-1. So we're in a little bit of a disagreement, but we both agree E United will probably win this set.
Yeah.
Do you realize that we have basically... See, this we should have done this prediction episode like 3 weeks ago before everybody else got their predictions out, because everybody else's prediction are Team Rival versus E United in the finals. Like F-Dot has this prediction, like Hindu Man has this prediction. Like,
yeah, but we're going in depth.
I don't know what Finch's prediction is, but I think Aggro has the same prediction that we did. Like everybody's predicting E United versus Rival.
But let me talk about one more thing, okay? So, because I wanted to go into specifically the E United against Obey matchup, and I think the interesting thing here is I think Obey actually would win this matchup more often than they would lose it. And that was what I was going to talk about with you.
I think it's more a little bit in E United's favor in that specific matchup. Just like if they played 100 times, I think E United maybe wins it 55-45. Like,
see, I think it's the other way around. I think in this matchup, Obey wins 55-45. And that is because Obey still is the smarter team, I think. And especially if Obey manages to make it through to there, right, they're gonna have to go over Elevate. And Elevate, they are almost certainly gonna have a bag of tricks, and if they do, Obey is gonna have to defeat that bag of tricks. And that will prove that they are a team that is very adaptable. And in that case, they will have adapted to what United's gonna bring out, I think.
If it's E United versus Obey, it's the exact opposite of what I see E United versus Elevate being. If the later the game goes, the better it is for E United.
I think
that's in my opinion.
I think it's the opposite.
When everything becomes even and the goal is even, and all you're doing now is fighting over fire nights where team fights are huge. I think E United wins it at that point. And so if it gets truly to the late game, I think E United has the edge. If it's kind of that early to mid late game kind of scenario where it's 25-30 minutes, it's a little bit even and more in Obey's favor. But I still think a true late game where it's 45, 50, 55 minutes, E United has the edge just based on their ability to team fight when everything is even.
See, I just think intelligence in the game still plays a much bigger role in the late game than you're necessarily making it out to be. Because it's not just purely about the team fights, right? It's also about the macro positioning on the map, and it's about getting picks still. Because if you can pick someone off, you effectively deny the other team from really trying to fight you over the fire giant, and if they do...
Don't I know that?
What?
I said, don't I know that?
Yeah.
Okay. A casual game a couple days ago. We lose all three. We lose all three Phoenixes. I'm playing Athena because I need Athena for the quest. Odyssey questing.
Got a question. Did you lose the game because you gave up too much damage on the Titan?
Yes, we did. But with three Phoenixes down, I'm screaming, get back to the base, defend the base, use the Titan for extra damage to even out the game and even out the damage.
Yeah.
Where are three of my teammates at? Mid games.
Yeah. Then they get picked and then you lose.
And they get picked and we lose. We're probably going to lose with three Phoenixes down anyway, but you stand a lot better chance if you're in the base fighting with the Titan than you are against fighting by yourself.
Yeah, and I think in that case is right. And I think the thing that you need to do to get an advantage in those fights late game, one of the biggest things you can do is get picks, and I think Obey is going to prove to be better at that because they are still the more intelligent team on a macro level, right? They're going to get picked less often and see more opportunities for picks in the late game.
United's not going to be like stupidly getting picked. If they get picked, it's going to be some like luck kind of thing where they're all backing, or they're all trying to back, and three of the members' backs get off before two of the other members, and like Obey's able to interrupt those backs, and it's too late for the three members to cancel their back because they're already in the base. Like it's not going to be like a stupid, I'm invading the blue buff at like 45 minutes and I'm going to get picked because I did something stupid like invade a blue buff. It's going to be something like some astronomical weird luck kind of thing because United's not stupid enough to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not just about being stupid, it's also about being smart and being smart enough to see opportunities when they arise, and I think Obey is a bit better at that than United is going to be. Because it's one thing to allow yourself to be picked, and it's another thing to allow yourself to get picks, right? And one of them is being not smart enough, and the other is being smart enough. And I think Obey has an advantage in that regard. And if that happens, if they can isolate someone, or if they can even just for a tiny bit get themselves into a position through that where a team fight is beneficial for them, they can win that team fight and they can win the game. And I think that's something that they're going to be able to do against a team like United. So yeah, I think main point being, I think Obey has a better shot against United than Elevate would. And I think Obey overall has an advantage over United, if they even get to them. And that is the questionable part.
It's definitely a matchup worth watching. Whether it's in the semifinals or next season sometime, early next season, where neither of these rosters has changed. It would be an interesting, fun match to watch.
Yeah, definitely.
But our finals predictions are both Rival and E-United for both of us.
Yeah, that's the most likely case, right?
I've already made my predictions clear throughout the entire split.
The entire season.
I think NA team is going to win it. Well, I still think an NA team wins it. So I will make the prediction that E United beats Rival. I have a feeling that yours is completely the opposite.
Yeah, definitely. I think Rival, like we talked about how good Rival is already quite a lot. And in my mind, they're clearly the best team in the world. and they are because their teamwork is so much better than everyone else's, and it's also so much better than United's. And I think that's going to give them the big edge in the finals, and it's going to propel them to winning the World Championship, pretty much regardless of who they end up facing, right? Even if they end up facing the Elevate, if they end up facing Obey, I think they are going to win it. The only one that I can see really taking them away from them would be Energy, and that would just be if Energy goes into Beast Mode, like we talked about already. And if Energy does that, then I also don't think United's going to be able to stop them.
I think United wins on a couple of scenarios, and if these scenarios happen, I think United wins. Panda Cat goes off and completely gets out of control, where Vote and Ice and Wolfie cannot handle him in the late game, or Benji takes a victory over Deathwalker, which that matchup alone is going to be what hypes me up about the finals. It's that Benji versus Deathwalker.
Yeah.
If Ice Baby struggles against Benji and Scream, I think that could be another scenario where E United takes the victory. If like I said, if Panda Cat gets out of control, like I'm used to seeing him do it, I think he can win. He could be enough to win the game with a little bit of help from some of the other guys. And it's just like E United needs these scenarios like to go in their favor to realistically beat Team Rival. And
yeah.
if everything goes their way, I still think in Game 5 it goes late where E United gets a win on a team fight and gets Fire Giant and wins it from there. I think this set goes 5. I think it goes the full distance, best of 5.
Yeah, I think that's the most likely result. But I think it's in favor of Rival, of course. And yeah, I think the things you're pointing out there make a lot of sense, right? I don't think it's gonna be Scream and Benji necessarily popping off completely, just because of how good Deathwalker is and how good he and Ice work together as well, right? And in that case, yeah, it's going to really come down to Panic Hat. And I'm not sure if he's going to be able to stop the combined efforts of a Team Rival, right? Because Rival, as a unit, is just so good. And even if as individual players they're not as good, like we already pointed out against in the matchup against Energy and LG, as a unit they can definitely win, and I think they will win against United if they meet them in the finals.
Another thing about E United is we seen it at the very end of the fall split, where again in that set against LG in the game 2 set, in the 2-game set against LG, that game 2, where Benji and Scream both struggled. The name who stepped up, Panda Cat stepped up. So it wasn't just any member of this team can step up and carry a game at any time. So it's not just about shutting down the one player. It's if you effectively shut down Deathwalker, who on this rival team is going to be able to step up? Like, we haven't seen it. Like, we've discussed this before. Yeah, but Ice is kind of Ice is a coin flip. Like, he's really good a lot of the time, and then he's really bad sometimes. So there's a coin flip there. So you don't know what you don't necessarily know what you're going to get from the Ice baby. But we've talked about it before. Deathwalker is the star of this team. If you can keep Deathwalker in check, who else steps up? Does anybody else step up? And that's the question mark. I said it earlier. As a 5-man unit, Rival's the best team in the world, but it's still very reliant on Deathwalker being Deathwalker. And without Deathwalker, without the carry from Deathwalker there, who else does it?
I don't think it needs to be one specific person that does it instead of Deathwalker, right? I think the big part of this rival roster has always been that they step it up as a team, not as individuals. And I think they still can do that even if Deathwalker doesn't pop off, right? He didn't have an amazing set against Obey in the finals of Super Regionals, right?
Yeah, but Obey didn't have a good set against Obey either.
Yeah.
Like that was a poor performance from Obey as a team. Like that wasn't necessarily. It was Rival kind of forced them into that, but it wasn't the best showing from an Obey Alliance team that we've seen before.
Yeah, but we've seen this roster step it up as a whole, right? And if they do that against the United, and I think they can definitely do it in 3 or 5 games that they're playing there, then they can win against this team. And there is still a tiny potential that someone on their roster explodes as well, right? Similar to Venenu, right? Venenu hasn't had a great many carry performances on the side of United. Vote has had carry performances on the side of Rival, and I'd say it's about an equal amount between the two players there. If you get what I'm saying.
Regardless, this is the matchup I hope for. This is the one matchup I want to see more than anything else.
Yeah.
And we're not guaranteed to see this matchup. Like we're kind of almost guaranteed to see Luminosity versus Energy. Like that's almost a guarantee that we see that matchup. Unless one of those teams on Wednesday crap the bed and they end up in the Thursday games. Yeah. We expect to see the Energy versus LG. We're not guaranteed to see Rival versus E United. I think this is the matchup everybody's looking forward to if we potentially get to see it. Just because of Benji versus Deathwalker. Take everything else out of the equation. That matchup, that Benji versus Deathwalker matchup in the solo lane, that's going to be one of the best matchups of the year.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that's the reason why I want to see this matchup more than any other in the finals that we can possibly get, right? Because other potential matchups would be most likely against either Obey or Elevate. And yeah, they've beaten Obey already, right? That would just be a repeat, probably, for Rival. And them against Elevate will also be interesting, but it wouldn't feature a 1v1 matchup in a specific position that would be as interesting to watch as Deathwalker against Benji, of course.
It's again, Deathwalker is the superstar of Team Rival. And at LAN, on these LAN events, we haven't seen a solo laner that can match up with him and can beat him. Variety at the summer finals at DreamHack, that was more of a team effort from Dignitas than it was Variety individually being able to beat Deathwalker. Deathwalker also, he paired up, he fought against Maniac on the Obey team in the summer finals. He played against Maniac in the spring finals as well. Played against Scary D at DreamHack as well. Like, he's always had the winning matchup when it comes to solo lane. He doesn't necessarily have that matchup now. Benji can fight him and can he's probably the one other solo laner in the league that matches up against Deathwalker and can take Deathwalker in a 1v1. Like, it's like 50-50.
Yeah.
And it's not... Deathwalker usually has the clear edge in that. He doesn't have the clear edge. This is an even matchup, in my opinion.
Well, you have to consider, right? We were saying the same thing when it came to a matchup between Deathwalker and Variety, for instance. Right? They were both competing for the #1 spot. Then rival Deathwalker just beat Variety in lane 1v1. It wasn't as close as expected, right? What makes you think that Benji is going to be different?
Because regardless of what Variety, what Variety does or what anybody else is, I think Benji has been considered one of the best solo laners going on for 2 years now. Variety has kind of fluctuated in and out of that discussion. Last year in Season 3, it was Baskin and Benji who was the best solo laner in the world. Baskin or Benji. This year, it was, especially at the beginning of this year, was it Benji or Variety? Or then it went Benji, Deathwalker, or Variety. And we haven't, Variety has fallen out of that discussion. Deathwalker has risen to into that discussion. Benji has never left that discussion. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's not fair to Baskin because Baskin changed roles, but Baskin could still be in that conversation as well if he was still playing solo lane. Like, it's not who is the best. This is going to answer who's the best solo laner in the world. Like, right? Benji has been there for 2 years. Deathwalker has brought himself into this in the last 7 to 8 months. Benji has consistently been there in that discussion for 2 years. Guys like Variety and Maniac and Deathwalker have all risen to that and then fallen apart. We haven't seen Deathwalker against Benji yet.
Okay, good point, yeah.
It's kind of... We've discussed this. In North America, solo lane is the most talented role in North America. There's still some talent in solo lane in Europe, but for the most part, the more talented role in Europe is the Hunter in the ADC role. Like we've said that before. So it's going to be the best of North America against the best of Europe in the argument of who the best solo laner in the world. And if Rival wins, if Benji still controls Deathwalker and beats Deathwalker, I think Benji can still be in that discussion and still make that argument.
Yeah. I think it definitely comes down to more to individual performances in the set than it necessarily does to the overall result, right? Even if it's the opposite way around and Deathwalker dominates Benji and they still lose the set.
Like last year we had Variety dominate the set against Energy, but Energy still won the set.
Yeah, and no one would have made the argument afterwards that Dimi was the better solo laner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be the same situation here, right? Because the rest of the team plays a role as well. Literally. Well, they play 4 roles as well. And yeah, it doesn't necessarily always... You don't necessarily always win by yourself. You almost never do, actually. So yeah, the discussion who's the better solo laner is gonna more come down to how the lane works out and how their impact in the late game works out, right? And yeah, and I think that's an interesting question that probably will be answered, like if things go according to plan. who's the better solo laner out of those two.
And we somewhat disagree a little bit on the impact of this matchup. Though we both agree that it's going to be very fun to watch. I think if Benji dominates this matchup against Deathwalker, and Deathwalker is not a factor in this set, I think United can win despite Rival being the better 5-man unit, because the talent there's more talent on E United from role to role than there is on that Rival. But the better 5-man unit is Rival, based on Deathwalker being impactful. And if Benji can shut down Deathwalker and can control Deathwalker, and where he's not as impactful, I think that is much more of a deterrent for Rival. I think that's what swings it in E United's favor. But again, quite the opposite. If Deathwalker gets the better of Benji, yes, then the matchup swings hugely in favor of Rival, but there's still a lot of talent on the E United side outside of just Benji himself.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, right? But I think when you consider one guy dominating completely, his team is most likely going to win, regardless of what happens. Just because that kind of lead that you get by dominating is going to translate very well into the mid game.
I just hope it's a good matchup and it's fucking awesome to see, because I started this game as a solo laner. I've always been more interested in the solo lane matchups than I have any of the other roles. So this is what, for me, this is a dream matchup. And this is what I want to see, this matchup in the finals.
Yeah, let's hope we will.
If you throw it back to season 1, this is Maniac versus Omega.
Yeah.
This is season 2. This is Maniac, this is Omega versus Demi. Season 3, this is Baskin versus whoever it is in Europe at the time. I don't know. Baskin or Benji against whoever it is in Europe at the time. Like, this is, for me, this is the best. This is the matchup more than any else. Whether it's as long as Benji versus Deathwalker, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, let's hope we get to see it, honestly. I mean, I would still like an all-EU final, of course, because that would be interesting as well.
Yeah, and I would also like to see an all-NA final, but...
Well, see, you already gave up on LG beating Rival, so...
If Rival plays like Rival at LAN, if Rival plays like Rival online, then LG's going to win.
Yeah.
If
well, LG is not going to beat Energy in the
LAN,
first place.
Then Rival's going to win.
Yeah, the World Championship, of course.
Yeah. That's it. So. But let's
move on to the rest of the topics we want to discuss.
Let's go to HRX. Like, that's the event as a whole. Like,
yeah, apart from Smite, from the Smite World Championship, there's also a lot of other World Championships going on, and let's discuss all of those as well, won't we?
No, because I don't know anything about Paladins.
Yeah, me neither. I also don't know anything about Smite console.
Smite console's going on, Hand of the Gods World Championships, or whatever it's called for the Hands of the Gods. That's going on. Like,
yeah. See, I saw today, by the way. Just wanna throw that in. I saw today that Paladins apparently has a PS4 scene and an Xbox scene. Okay. And there's gonna be finals in both of those. And then there's gonna be a final between the PS4 winners and the Xbox winners.
How are they going to do that?
I don't know. It says it's best of 7.
Put them. Take the consoles out. When you got PS4 versus Xbox champions, take the consoles out. Put everybody on PC.
Yeah.
PC, that way everything is even. Like neither of the teams are completely comfortable on keyboard and mouse, and it's like that would be the even part. Like to force the PS4 team to play the Xbox controller or the Xbox team to play with the PS4 controller. That kind of skews the results in somebody's favor.
No,
Put them on the keyboard and mouse. Put them on keyboard and mouse. That way everything is as even as you can make it.
No, just put them on PC and let them play with the controller.
Yeah, you can do that too.
See, works perfectly. Yeah. Or maybe they have cross-platform. I don't know. I have no idea about Paladins, by the way.
Hi-Rez might be willing to do it, but you got Microsoft and Sony. They're not going to work together.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Sony would be up. Microsoft would be up for it. Just Sony seems to be a bit hesitant, from what I've heard. But yeah.
See, I've heard the exact opposite. I heard Microsoft is the one that doesn't want to do it.
Well, I don't know.
But as far as the Smite announcements as HRX, we're getting the organizations revealed. The 12 organizations that are going to be the SPL in the SPL next season are going to be announced. The new Conquest map is going to be fully unveiled. Is there anything else that you can think of that might come out? Because I hope we don't see another Pantheon, but if the past 2 Worlds HRXs are any type of something to go on, we are going to get a new Pantheon.
I feel like they've got their hands full with the new map already, right? We got a new one going from Season 1 to Season 2, and as far as I know, we didn't get a new Pantheon back then. Is that right?
We got Season 2, at the end of Season 2, the Japanese Pantheon for Season 3, and then last year we got the Celtic Pantheon.
Yeah. But so going from Season 1 to Season 2, we didn't get a new Pantheon because we got a new Conquest map, right? And that takes a lot of effort just by itself. So I'm not expecting a new Pantheon, and it's not like we've had a giant gap between the last god and now, right?
Well, patch notes on Wednesday, I expect to have a new god announced.
Yeah, that's something I expect. I'm just not expecting it to be part of a new Pantheon.
If you've gone through data mining, though, which I hope the data mining is wrong in this scenario, but if the data mining is to be believed, we're getting Cerberus, which is the Guardians of the Gate of Hell. It's the three-headed dog. It's the Hades pet. I don't like it. I think he would be better situated as a map objective, like a Fire Giant or a Gold Fury type objective.
Yeah, I think if they do it well, right, I'm gonna like it. If they don't, then I'm not gonna like it. It's not that interesting. But yeah, I'm gonna have to wait and see if Cerberus does come out. Then I want to see what he is going to be doing. If he's done well, I'm gonna like it. Otherwise, obviously, I think he would have had great potential as well as a map objective or something. But yeah, I'm kind of more salty that we're not gonna get what was his name? Can't think of it. The Fire Giant now has a name, right? Or is gonna have one in Season 5.
See, that's the first I'm hearing of it. I didn't know Fire Giant was getting a name.
It is, yeah. So there's a Fire Giant in Norse mythology, and the name escapes me right now.
Well, to be honest with you,
Surtur. That's his name.
To be honest with you, though, the Kraken is a Norse mythology.
Yeah.
Beast.
See, I don't have an issue with it being Norse mythology on the Greek map. I have an issue with it not being a god, right? Because I think Surtur would have worked well as a god as well, and I would have liked to see that. But now he's gonna be the fire giant forever.
Yeah, but then again, the Kraken released the Kraken. That's besides all. That's a Greek god with a Norse mythology creature. Like,
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that.
Yes, it fits, but if we're going like it, if we're going with some stuff that is not really kind of crazy, then that's the one that comes to mind first.
Yeah, but see, Clash of the Titans is a fun movie to watch.
I didn't like it.
But it is totally not worth it in 3D, because 3D is terrible on it.
Has there ever been a movie in 3D that's any good? Because I saw the last Harry Potter movie in 3D. That was terrible.
So
watching the movie normal, not in 3D, good movie. Watching it in 3D, God, that was terrible.
Okay, so I've got a story for you, okay? It's off topic as hell, but let's throw it in there. So, I went to watch The Last Jedi on IMAX 3D. For the first time on IMAX 3D. Was the first movie I watched on IMAX 3D. And it was good on 3D, in 3D, right? Because obviously it's a very visually beautiful movie. So
that's a gorgeous movie visually.
Yeah. So that was worth it in 3D, totally. Outside of that, not as much. Right?
I got a story to tell about The Last Jedi. Spoiler alert! But
don't.
You know the part. You know the part when they're on the planet, they're at the base, and the guy steps out on the white sand for the first time, and it turns red.
Yeah.
I thought it was the guy was bleeding.
Yeah, me too.
It didn't dawn on me that it was actually the white dust turning red when you flipped it over or kicked it up until I saw the speeder like things going in the red dust trail behind them. It never dawned on me. It didn't dawn on me until that moment that it wasn't the guy bleeding.
Yeah. That's hardly even a spoiler, to be honest.
Okay, so let's get into some of the news this week. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but it's something worth mentioning.
Well, first of all, let's talk quickly about the Conquest map as well, because they've revealed some stuff about it. What do you think, just generally?
We've seen the overlay of it. We haven't got to see the full visual map, and we'll probably get an unveiling either Wednesday or Thursday at Hi-Res Expo. But from what we can tell, as far as buff placements go, we talked about this last week on the short. The speed buff being moved back to where the back camps were, and just the speed buff now being kind of like an XP buff. That's the big change, because you're going to have to think about it. If you're the enemy jungler, it's a bigger risk to go get that speed buff now, to invade on the speed buff now.
Yeah.
So you got to weigh the risk-reward option, and is it worth that risk to deny the extra speed to the enemy jungler than it is to put yourself out of position and potentially get picked. Like that's visually, aesthetically, the map being 20% larger and the buffs being on a smaller retime, that's impactful as a whole. But the speed buff, moving that speed buff further back, which I thought they should have done at the beginning of Season 4, which I'm finally glad that they're doing in Season 5, that's going to be the impactful part. That's going to be the most impactful part for me.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm glad you stopped me, because I wanted to throw a scenario at you. How about for casual, have the Season 5 map for every time you play ranked, it's always on the Season 5 map. But for the casual conquest, you have two different game modes. You have Season 5 map only, and then you have random map as well. Like you can get the Season 1 map,
or who would want to play a Season 1 map?
Season 3 map, or Season 4 map, or it'll change from game to game. Like you got like I guess, was it like 18% chance because there's 6 different maps because you do have the season 0 map as well
with the side jungles.
with the side jungles, and so you got you got an 18 to 20% chance of getting a different map every time you play, and like that would make the strategy and the replayability of just casual conquest infinite. Like that, it would make it the replayability great for it, and that would be awesome to me.
I'm not sure if it would be popular, right? Because a lot of people, I think, once they've played old maps again, are going to notice the clear flaws that they had. Right? A lot of people are very looking back to the Season 1 map, I think, with very rose-tinted glasses. Because it had massive issues, right? The speed buff being on different sides, depending on which side of the map you started on, etc.
But yeah, that was the thing that stood out to me, because in season 1, the speed buffs were on opposite side of the map. Like you'd have a speed and red buff on one side of the map, and then you would have the red and the speed buff. It's like a mirror image on the exact opposite side of the map.
Yeah, it was diagonally mirrored instead of just vertically, right?
Yeah, and that brought in some different strategies, where if you're the team where your red buff is on the solo lane side of the map and you're getting that red buff, like solo laner would have to pick like a different god, because maybe you would pick Hercules or Chalk because they had some regen, and that power you can regen through that extra power. Or if the speed buff was on that side of the map, maybe you pick somebody like Mana who has a dash that can get away from that extra damage. Like it brought out different strategies, and that's what I thought might be cool if they did kind of the casual conquest map that way. The casual conquest game type that way, where it's a different map every time you play. Or you can just have you can pick the mode where Season 5 map only, and you can just play on a new map.
Yeah, again, what I was saying is I think it wouldn't be popular, the random map, because old maps had clear issues as well. And once people would play them again, they would notice those clear issues, right? And that's why I think they just wouldn't be popular. Also, they're visually obviously much worse, right? There's no denying that the Season 1 map didn't look as good as the map that we've had for the last 3 years.
You can also run it through a visual update where it doesn't look as crappy as it used to.
Yeah, but that's not... Harris is not going to take that much of an effort, right? They would have to update 5 different maps.
It would be cool for nostalgia purposes.
Yeah, but they're not going to do it.
And you can also do it with the Joust map, right? Like the old Joust map, where you had the jungle on both sides of the map instead of just one, the red buff being on one side of the map and then the entire rest of the jungle being on the opposite side of the map. Like,
yeah,
having that old Joust map, that would be fun to play again. Like, just
no, it wouldn't be.
Nostalgia purposes, right?
You would just have people turtling all the time, and it would suck. See, I remember what was wrong with the old Joust map, and it was terrible. I've never liked Joust, to be fair, but I have bad memories of the old Joust map because it was just Turtle Town. And I have bad memories of the old Conquest map because it was, well, you start on the wrong side, you don't get speed as a jungler. Have fun. Or it was, what else was it? Well, I can't go back to previous seasons because I didn't play back then. But yeah, I think from a nostalgia perspective, it's interesting. Yeah, but I think it's not fun. It's interesting.
You also had in Season 1. You also had 2 blue buffs on the map. Both solo lane and the ADC got it.
Yeah, just imagine current hunters with current Deathstall, with current Bombas Mask, and blue buff.
Yeah, and in Season 2, you had the attack speed buff.
Yeah, just
early Season 3, you had boars on both sides of the map, with red and blue buff being in the speed and red buff. Like it would add a different strategy every time you played. But yeah, it would be kind of hard to handle.
And yeah, see, even if it works out well, right? Even if a lot of people played it, it would still have an issue in that it would split up the player base. which would screw with matchmaking, which is already an issue in Smite. So, yeah.
Well, you can get rid of the mode of the day because nobody ever really plays mode of the day anyway.
Yeah. Well, then it doesn't really move anyone from mode of the day to conquest. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I think some other stuff about the new conquest map was some visuals were released, right? Some buff visuals. The buffs now have unique monsters there. Not sure if you've seen that.
Yeah, they did the same thing with the where the red buff is a different model than the speed buff, or the different model than the blue buff.
Yeah. And yeah, what we're also getting is the fog back. So, are you excited about that?
It was aesthetically kind of a nuisance when we had it, but it wasn't like a game-changing thing. It was just kind of like, oh, wow, there's fog there.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a game-changing visual effect. It was more like, I don't really want to have to do that.
Yeah.
I don't really want to have to deal with that. But yeah, it was.
Yeah, see, I think
it could be fun, but it could be annoying.
Yeah, I think the argument that people like to bring forth about fog making things more scary just doesn't really work overall, right? Because Smite is a game you play dozens, if not hundreds, amounts of times, right? So you're gonna walk through the jungle hundreds, if not thousands, of times, and at that point in time, nothing's scary anymore. If you played through Amnesia 1,000 times, it wouldn't scare you anymore.
It would be scarier if like some of the buff camps had different respawn timers, like a random respawn timer instead of just set respawn timer.
Then that screws with competitive play, obviously.
Yeah.
So it's not possible.
That would not be possible with competitive. As it is now with the respawn timers being set, it's not that big of a deal. It's more just something pretty to look at or something ugly to vomit.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part is you can still make it just to have something that's aesthetically pleasing, or you can have it so that it has a gameplay effect, right? And I think part of the effect it's gonna have is it's gonna sort of obfuscate the view a bit, so you're not gonna be able to watch from your solo lane to the fire giant anymore.
The only gameplay issue this it's going to involve is if you're for some reason scared of fog. Like if you have an irrational fear of fog, that might be scary. But it's.
I do wonder if that exists.
There's an irrational fear of chocolate, so I'm sure there's an irrational fear of fog somewhere.
Wait, of chocolate? Can you imagine if you had that and lived in Switzerland?
I couldn't imagine living with that because I'm kind of a chocoholic myself. I love chocolate. It's my favorite freaking food or favorite dessert. Anything chocolate. Chocolate cake with chocolate frosting, chocolate syrup, and chocolate ice cream, and chocolate chips. And you never have too much chocolate if you're me.
Yeah. Sounds good. Anyway, yeah. Moving on to as you always said, the one point of news that we really have to discuss this week.
We're going on a long episode.
We need to wrap this up before 3 hours, by the way. So we have 20 more left. Anyway, so the news that broke this week was Team Vigilant, obviously the team, Pain to Beyond's team, right? But not the team, but the org itself, shared their experience with Smite, and it looked like they were trying to, with Smite and with Hi-Rez, and it looked like they were trying to stir up some drama around the entire thing. And it was weird.
It was weird. This would be something, something a little bit more, had a little bit more girth to it. If they hadn't have completely disappeared online. Like their website no longer worked. Like they deleted their Facebook and Twitter. Like it wasn't around. Like
Yeah.
that. Like all that stuff included on them. Their attacks on Hi-Rez and on particular one individual Hi-Rez Cooper. Like it would have a lot more merit to it if they hadn't have done what they did to follow up.
Yeah, and it would have had more merit if it wasn't a damn Reddit post.
Yeah, if it was something like a tweet longer and not a Reddit post, then yeah, it would have more merit. But
no, if it was an article on their website, it would have had more merit to it.
The problem with that is like their website was down 5 minutes after their Reddit post, so it was like you had 5 minutes to catch it, or it was disappeared.
Yeah, well, see, if they had a website, they would have more merit.
This is like, and if you read the reactions to the Reddit post and some of the reactions on Twitter from Cooper and guys like DM Brandon, who's no longer a part of the company but weighed in on the topic as well, it was kind of a bad situation for Vigilant. Nobody really took them serious after what they did with their Twitter, with their website, their Twitter, and their Facebook stuff. Like, it kind of mirrors what we've heard about as far as Direwolves is concerned, the LG Direwolves, the Australian team we talked about earlier, that's no longer around because of payment issues.
Yeah,
I think it kind of mirrors that exact same situation, but you know the Direwolves team, not the organization, the LG Direwolves team decided to stop. Like they didn't want anything to do with the Pro League or their payments. But you know the Direwolves was, you know, that was still an organization. They still have like League of Legends and Dota teams. Vigilant just disappeared completely. Like I don't even know if they still have. I don't even know if they have a League of Legends team, or if they had a League of Legends team to begin with, or any other esport related team. Like as far as I know, it was just. As far as I know, it was just Smite, and after they put that Reddit post online, completely disappeared. Like that was like, now you've just lost your entire all of your credibility by doing that. There's no credibility to any of this anymore.
Yeah, and that's why I can't really take the entire thing seriously, honestly.
I wouldn't take it seriously either. Like there were some people on the Reddit in their reaction saying like this was their experience with Cooper as well. There were some people saying like all their experiences with Hi-Rez Cooper have been great, and he's really gone out of his way to help their specific organization. Like there's a lot of mixed reactions as far as the topic in general goes, but what's not mixed is what happened after this was on, and Vigilant just completely disappearing from the face of the internet.
Yeah, I think the general issue is more with how Cooper potentially treats the non-EU and NA teams and the teams that aren't in the SPL, right? Because there are some conversations leaked with challenger teams, and obviously the entire Direwolf situation with other teams in other leagues, I think, aren't entirely just clean, or they don't let Hi-Rez appear in a good light. But yeah, we see very little complaints from the NA and EU pros in the SPL, right? We generally normally only see good things said about Cooper and about the Hi-Rez esports team, sort of. So I wouldn't.
I do hope the entire decision-making progress, as far as esports is concerned, isn't solely on Hi-Rez Cooper.
Yeah.
I hope that there's more than him there, because that's a lot to take on as one person. So let's hope that there's more there. But they're Vigilant was trying to paint Cooper out to be a complete dick or a complete asshole that never did anything right, which we know is not the case. But as far as LG and the LG Direwolves and the other international teams that aren't specifically SPL teams, like to ask one guy to do the entire, run the entire scene for the entire world, not just the SPL, but the Southeast Asian, the Latin, the Brazil, the Oceania, and all the other regions that Smite is a part of in an esports scene. To ask one person to do that, it's a lot on one person's plate. So I'm hoping it's more than just Hi-Res Cooper.
Yeah, me too, definitely. And yeah, I think that's all we have to say about that topic, right?
And if it is just Cooper, like, you can forgive him for some stuff, like, because that is, like I said, that's a lot to ask from one person. So if it is just Cooper, give the guy some slack.
Yeah, they need a second guy at least. One guy for international stuff.
They probably need like a team of like 4 people doing this.
They should have one per region at least. Maybe one specifically for the Challenger series and everything lower than the SPL as well.
Yeah, have like a committee with like the chair of the committee, the esports committee, being Hi-Res Cooper.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. Still, I think that's all we have to say about the topic, right? So we've got 14 minutes left. Let's wrap this thing up, I'd say.
You want to sing our theme song?
We don't have a theme song still. You have to compose one if you want us to have one. But yeah.
Like you said, we got 14 minutes to go.
We can't compose a song in 14 minutes, please. Anyway. Thank you all for watching this episode of Tuesday Night Smite. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, then feel free to leave us a like on the platform of your choice. This will be on SoundCloud again for once. Like, it's not a TNS short, so it's going to be on SoundCloud. And yeah, if you want to see more episodes, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow us on SoundCloud. We hope that you do that, and we hope you're interested. And thank you, Sabo, for being here with me today. I'm pretty sure we're going to see us again next week to discuss what did happen, because today we discussed what we think will happen. Right?
Unless you can see in the future, yeah, that's right.
Good, yeah.
do you have, are you Professor Xavier? Can you?
No, I am not. I am not bald, in fact. So. And anyway.
You're not bald, but you didn't say you weren't in a wheelchair or had mental powers, like psych.
Yeah, that's the one difference between me and Xavier, is I'm not bald.
What am I thinking right now?
I don't know.
Okay.
Damn it. Anyway, I already said thank you for watching, so all I have left to say is thank you, Sabo. I already said that as well. Anyway, good night.
It's still nice.
What?
It's still nice to hear.
Yeah. Thank you again.
Thank you goes a long way.
Yeah. And with all that said, and with many thank yous, good night, good Smite, and we hope you enjoy the World Championship.